All right, thank you for joining us today. My name is Matt Hilland. I'm a financial planner at Arnold and Moat Wealth Management. And our topic today is a general overview of your personal credit report and things that you can do to protect yourself from identity theft primarily. This is a common question we get from clients and an issue that periodically we have to help clients recover from. And it seems like every week now there's something in the news about a new big data leak and how your personal information has been released. And so this is just a topic that tends to be on a lot of people's minds, kind of worrying about what they can do to protect themselves. And so just to start, why is this a topic at all? Well, it impacts a wide range of people and can have some pretty costly consequences. Roughly 1 in 10 people in the United States are impacted by some form of identity theft each year, and that costs over $16 billion in losses annually. And so this is a very big deal for a lot of people. What this can look like in some of these scenarios, we've all probably had that one time your credit card info stolen or your credit card was skimmed and an unauthorized purchase shows up. That's certainly part of this, but scarier parts are when someone truly takes your identity to open up loans, uses your social security number for work or for renting a house somewhere, or claims benefits under your name. And a fraud that's growing really rapidly over the last 5 years or so is using your identity to claim your tax refund. And so just in the past year, there's been about $6 billion in refunds that have been flagged by the IRS as potential identity fraud. I don't think all of these were, but there's some suspicious there where multiple people are trying to claim tax returns or it's trying to be sent to a new bank account. And so this is something that in one way or another impacts a lot of people and can be a lot of money. So there's going to be two phases to our webinar today. First is just making sure that no one has already started the process of using your identity. We'll look at options you have to protect your identity and make sure nothing is added to your credit report in the future without your knowledge. But to get started, the easiest way to see a comprehensive list of your current credit is just by simply pulling a personal credit report. This can be done at annualcreditreport.com. I think this is the easiest place you can get these reports from all three companies in one place. You can also just go to Experian's website and request there, go to TransUnion's website and request there. But when you do that, you're on their site. And they do a lot of upsells for other services that they offer. And quite frankly, I just prefer this website here. It makes it much easier to get all three at one time and kind of avoid some of the sales pitches that you might get otherwise. And then you might remember that it used to be you were limited to how often you could pull a credit report is one annually from each of these companies. And that kind of made it difficult to, schedule a time when you could withdraw from these companies, remember, 11 months ago, which company you pulled from. And they've made it a lot easier. As of October of 2023, you can now receive a free credit report weekly from each of these credit bureaus. And so pulling all three and reading through all three every week is most likely overkill. Quarterly would be fine, even less than that if you can set up some good protections like we'll talk about in the future. But initially, if this is something you have not done in many years, take the time this first go around to pull your three credit reports from this site and then look through. So why is it important to spend the time and look through your credit reports? Well, first, this is a report from Consumer Reports. They did a little study here with a few thousand people and found that more than a quarter of people have what they call serious mistakes on their credit report. So not just a minor little error or typo somewhere, but serious mistakes that are impacting their credit. And so again, a very wide issue here that if you have not reviewed these reports and looked at your personal file, it's not unlikely that you're going to see some type of error on there. And so, this is not always very serious financial fraud, but as we'll look in a sec, even minor errors can have an impact on you financially. And so, what's most common here is unrecognized accounts. This will be accounts that someone else opened under your name and potentially in some kind of default state where your credit score is being impacted. And we'll look here in a sec at all the different things to review on your credit report, but just so you have an idea of what kind of the common issues are that people find. So why is identifying these errors so important? Besides identifying fraud, which we'll talk about in a minute, there are a lot of other errors that can just happen from mistakes. Old credit accounts could still be shown as open, which shows you have more loan or credit outstanding than you really do. Payments could be mistakenly labeled as late or in default, which would obviously be bad too. And these errors can have a few obvious consequences. Really significant errors could cause trouble if you're trying to get a car loan or a mortgage, or at the very least, they might make it so you don't qualify for kind of the best rates or the best offers that financing companies have available. And so you might still qualify just fine, but you might not know that there would be a lower interest rate option available if you had, better credit and could fix those mistakes on your reports. And now if you're retired, you might be thinking your days of taking out loans are over, and so this isn't really a big deal. But as a couple of you have experienced firsthand, and as some of you will find out more just as we talk and continue through the planning process, there can be a lot of scenarios where even if you have millions of dollars in retirement accounts, it can be worth taking out a short-term loan for, say, a mortgage or a car payment just to avoid the tax consequences of big IRA or 401k withdrawals. And so there are issues here that can apply no matter who you are. You might not initially think qualifying for a loan is a big deal for you, but it very much can come up. And this is something that you don't want to have to address in a hurry as you're trying to, close on a new house and be in a rush for that. But besides some of these obvious cases, your credit report flows into a lot of different areas of your financial life. If you're renting an apartment, it can come up. It can come up in jobs as you're applying for jobs. And even things like your insurance premiums can be affected by your credit. And so if you have an error on your report showing a prior loan is in default or something like that, it can result in you paying more for insurance for the rest of your life if it's not found. And so, sure enough here, I pulled my credit reports just as part of preparing this webinar today. And what do you know? I had an inquiry very recently from Progressive Insurance on my credit report. And so this is a very real scenario here where errors can impact your insurance and many other things. And so when you go to annual credit report and pull your reports, what exactly should you be looking for? And the first thing you're going to want to do is just verify that your personal information is correct. If you pull reports from either TransUnion or Experian, this is going to be the very first section you'll see on your credit report. If you pull Equifax, they put this down towards the end, but it is still there. You'll see a section that lists all the names that use your social security number. And it's very normal to have a few variations. Just for example, I have Matt and Matthew and Matt Hilland and Matthew Hilland on mine, some with some middle names or middle initial. That should be pretty obvious. What would be the big red flag is if you have a very different name, that's a clear sign that there's some kind of trouble on your credit report, someone else using your identity. Addresses are another good one to look through, and this can always be tough because if you've moved around a lot, it might be tough to remember, all your addresses from the past 15 or 20 years. But if you see an address in a state you've never lived in, again, that's probably a very obvious red flag. And keep in mind, there can be some legitimate reasons that certain addresses will show up that you might not have lived in before. Kind of a common one that we've seen is if you, for example, co-signed a loan or maybe co-signed your child's lease for an apartment, when they were in college, you might see your name attached to that address, and at first glance, you know you never lived in that town, but just kind of think of a few other reasons why there might be a reason. You'll also see a section with phone numbers that are registered to your name and social security number. Again, this is a really good check to do that no one's stolen your identity. And so many online security features now result or use, texting your phone a certain code to verify your identity. And so a different phone number that's on there again could be just a potential sign of some danger on your credit report. And then the bulk of your credit report is just going to be a list of all your current and past credit accounts and loans. And so here what you're looking for is accounts that you don't recognize. And then even if you know the accounts are yours, you want to ensure that the status is reported correctly. If you have never been in default on your credit card, but you see something is showing, late or in default, that's an error that you want to get corrected. And this is the part that will just take a little while depending on your credit history. But again, this is important because this is how you ensure no one is out there, racking up debt under your name. And one thing here specifically to note, if you have student loans that have been forgiven, this seems to be a mess right now on people's credit reports. And so verify your student loans show up as closed or paid in full and are not showing up as open or in default, just as there's been executive orders kind of here, and the whole system's kind of a mess, and especially reporting to the credit bureaus, it seems like that can be a big thing, that if you just had student loans forgiven and are qualifying for that mortgage, make sure that those are showing up right. If you're one of those 25% or so that have errors on your credit report, here's what you're going to want to do. For small errors, this might just be a spelling error in your name or one random credit account that just has incorrect payment history. Go to the bottom of the credit report and you'll find a section about correcting or disputing the information on your report. And so here's just what the section on your Experian credit report will look like. You can dispute this online. You can submit a claim over the phone or even through the mail if you would prefer. You can wait, you'll get a response from them to verify that it has been fixed, or potentially just asking for more information. But again, just a pretty simple way to correct some of those small errors. If you do find something very bad, accounts open and active that are not yours, different names or cell phone numbers on there, you might want to take different steps. And so the exact steps you'll want to take depend on exactly what the issue is. But one thing I can tell you for sure is to go to identitytheft.gov. This has a really nice process to report what is wrong and then provides you with kind of a customized, specific, actionable steps to go through and correct the problem. And I'll just say too, a quick note for clients, this would also be a good thing to let us know. It's helpful for us just to be on guard that there's potentially some fraud out there. And if you're very concerned, there are protections we can put on your Schwab accounts to kind of lock those down if there really is an active high-risk situation. And so now let's say you've reviewed your report and everything looks good, or you've at least gone through the process to clean up any errors. Now that you know your current situation is good, how do you go about ensuring you are protected from any kind of future fraud? And so freezing your credit is one really popular way. This prevents any new accounts from being opened under your name. If your credit is frozen and someone, including you, goes and tries to open up a credit card or take out a loan, they will be denied. You will have to go to each of the 3 credit bureaus separately to initially request this freeze. There's a link on usa.gov/credit freeze here, and that web page directly links you to the 3 credit bureaus and the exact page that you need to go to request this freeze at each of those places. You'll have to do it on each of those 3 separately. And so this can be a slight hassle just to set up. And if you need credit in the future, you'll have to go in and unfreeze from each of those 3, then request the loan, and then go back and refreeze your accounts. But this is the best way to make sure nothing gets opened without your knowledge. And then once you set it up, it will stay active for as long as you need it. It's kind of indefinite. If that's just kind of too much, or you're not looking for that level of protection or hassle, maybe, there is also something called fraud alert. This is not a credit freeze. It's a different kind of setting you can put on your credit reports. And this does not necessarily prevent any accounts from being opened, but it will come back and request that the lender verify more information before opening the account. It kind of flags them that there's some suspicious or potential for fraud, and so they might request for additional, documents for identity protection and things like that. This is really designed for a situation where your information is out there and there's a high risk in the immediate future that someone tries to steal your identity, but you really can set this up whenever you want. It only lasts 1 year though, and so if you are concerned about this for the long term, it's something you're going to have to do every year, kind of reset this up. And if you are a victim of identity theft, you can apply to have it on file for up to 7 years. And then as a final benefit, you'll only need to set this up at one of the 3 credit agencies. They're required to notify the other 2. And so go to one of the agencies, request a fraud alert on your personal credit report, and they'll do the rest to make sure that all the agencies know to apply this, on your credit report. And so if you don't want to deal with freezing your credit, this can be another option just to add a little extra level of security. And if you're looking for additional active protection, you should know that Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, along with a lot of other companies today, do offer paid services to monitor your credit report and alert you of any changes. Though you should know that this service is also offered for free a lot of different places as well. Just for example, a couple of different credit card companies, I think Chase and Discover at the very least, American Express also, offer these types of free credit monitoring. And so just for example here, this is a screenshot I have with my Chase credit cards. I get notified immediately whenever there's a ping or inquiry on my credit report, or if a new account's opened at all. And so these free services will notify you, but don't necessarily stop the fraud from happening. So you should be able to catch it right away, act before anything too bad happens. But these free services are probably not going to help you, kind of go through the steps of fixing any fraud that's there. The paid services offer you a little bit more help if you're a victim, and may also kind of have this insurance policy as part of it to reimburse you for any losses. The process to fix some of these errors is pretty easy if you do it yourself. And I'd say a reason not to look at those paid services if you don't necessarily want the help. Don't just pay for simple monitoring. And as we'll look at in a sec, there's a lot of other usually cheaper ways to add some insurance aspects to that if that's something you're worried about too. And then finally, just besides monitoring your credit report, you might also want to consider what's called identity protection or identity monitoring. This relates to things not necessarily related to, credit cards or loans, but might be information, even like your email address and passwords that are part of any data leaks, or if it looks like someone is impersonating you online. Again, this is a service offered for free by many places. Here's the option that I had when I logged into my Chase account to get it set up. And now I receive notifications if any of my personal information is leaked. And that might alert me to, either put a fraud fraud alert on my credit reports, go and change my passwords to some of my main logins online, and maybe just be more diligent for a period of time in checking my credit report. And so again, there are lots of paid options and they certainly can be very legitimate services, but don't think that they're necessarily required to get a good level of protection on your credit or on your identity. They may give you a good peace of mind. And then also first look and see if there are any free offers that you're part of because of data breaches. If you've received something in the mail about, a data breach at your credit card company or wherever, it seems pretty standard that they would offer like a year of identity protection as part of just their compensation for being at fault for your information leaking. And so before you go and sign up for kind of a high monthly service, see if there's any kind of free or at least limited offers that you can be a part of. And then also, if you are worried about some of the potential damages that could come up from this, first check your home insurance for any protection here. It's very common to have some kind of identity theft protection on your home or renters or condo policy. Screenshot here just from what I had by default on mine. This is usually not something you have to request. But you'll see here that just a very basic coverage, in this case, covers up to $15,000 of expenses as a result of any kind of identity theft. And so double check that you have that before you add on any paid services, because this might be all that you realistically need, some of the free monitoring, and then knowing that you have an insurance policy here as well. And so that's all we had for today. Again, thanks so much for joining us here. Please let us know if you have any questions. This is also something we're happy to kind of sit down with in a meeting with you if you would like just a little bit more help going through everything. And as a reminder, this was just a request from a couple clients for a topic. And so if there's ever topics you would like to see us cover in a webinar, please just let us know and we'd be happy to look into it a little further. So if there's no questions, thank you and have a good weekend.